I want to talk to. We're going to be doing a little bit of teaching. I'm combining between Ephesians and Christmas. Um, but I feel like as I'm getting ready to talk about this, I should have on some kind of Christmas sweater or something to make it a little more jolly. But unfortunately, I didn't change. But you can look behind me and see the Christmas tree. There's so many things that we have wrapped up in the package of Christmas. And there are some things that we have made a tradition of that really don't have any basis for. And so, unfortunately, I may punch some of your balloons, but that's okay. We can all deal with the truth. But in the story, I love the book of Luke. Luke tells a story of Mary and the conception of Jesus. And before we go into that, I just want to clarify a few facts. Number one, Jesus was not born in December. Well, how do you know that? Well, because the shepherds would not have been out in the field tending their flock. December was very, very cold, and they would have already had their sheep in the pens taken care of. They would not have been sitting out there. Number two, the star would not have been in the sky at that point, the stars representing the Jesus. And another thing that's interesting is the 12 wise men. There were not 12 wise men. There weren't even 4 wise men. There were not even 3 wise men. You know how many there were? There had to have been at least 200 to 300 because they always traveled in a herd, I would say. They traveled in a caravan. I mean, it was huge when they traveled. And so that's what caught Herod's attention. Number one, they didn't come on the day Jesus was born, by the way. It was a year later that they actually appeared to Mary and Joseph. And because it took that long for them to get from where they were and the revelation of the Christ child all the way to Bethlehem. But the fact is that Herod saw this caravan of all of these wise men coming through his city, and that's kind of what gave him a heads up about the Christ child Jesus. He was 2 years old by the time they had got to him. So there's a little, we have some all kind of things here going on that's cute. But the truth of the matter is, some of them aren't working. They're not true. But that doesn't matter because I love December. And I can't think of a better time. I like cold weather and snow and the whole 9 yards and the twinkling lights. And I'd much rather have it in December than I had in August because I grew up in Florida and it was too hot and we didn't get the fire and the whole 9 yards. So God saw that. He worked it out. It doesn't matter. But what matters is that God had a plan. He had a plan for man. God always has a plan when there needs to be. And because of what Adam had done, God had to have a plan to redeem man. And the only way that man could be redeemed was if God himself came down and became a human being. God took on the form of a human. That's his humanity. But I want to make something very clear. He never gave up his deity. The child that was born was the most amazing that has ever been created or born. And in Isaiah, it says that a child was born. That's his humanity. A child is born. But it says a son was given. The son was never born. He was given. He always had been. So there it talks about his deity and his humanity. And the very fact that laying in that manger was deity itself. And I don't think we can possibly comprehend that. And how did that happen, Louise? How did deity come down and be born of Mary? Well, the Bible says that an angel came to Mary She's only 15 years old. Now, I can't imagine at 15 years old being married, being not married. She was engaged to Joseph, but a lot of times the engagements lasted for over a year or so before they even got married. So they were in an engagement period, and in that engagement period, unlike today, they did not sleep together. That was forbidden. And so she was engaged. She was 15 years old, and this angel appears to her. And she didn't come from royalty in the sense that she wasn't from a well-heeled family, so to speak. Matter of fact, she was the girl down the road that came from the farmer's family. She'd probably been the girl in high school that nobody really paid much attention to. She certainly wasn't the prom queen. I don't know if Mary was a particularly attractive person or whatever, but the point is that Jesus chose someone who was of the lineage of David, because that was very important. She was of the lineage of David. And he knew her heart. And he came to her and he said, Mary, you are going to bear the Son of God. And she's like, yeah, really? I mean, come on, look, I'm a virgin. What? And she may not have said it in that way, but I can say in today's terms that probably would have been about how it would have gone. And the angel looked at her and said, but Mary, the Holy Spirit is going to come down upon you. And basically what he was saying was that the Holy Spirit, God himself, is going to impregnate you. Jesus was not impregnated by a quote unquote man, because the sin nature is passed through the bloodline, and the bloodline is passed through the man. The man determines whether you are A positive, A negative, AO, whatever. And it is through the bloodline that is passed the sin nature to the woman and to the child, to everyone. I mean, the woman's involved, but she cannot pass on the sin nature. She carries the child in her. So the father had to be sin-free. He had to be of the nature of God that had no sin. And the only one that could do that was God himself. And so he impregnated Mary. Now, the most interesting part of this is this. Mary is standing there, she's going, how is this going to happen? Remember where we say that the Word of God is so important, and what you say is what you get. And Mary thought about it, and then this is what she said. Okay, be it unto me. I don't understand everything. I don't comprehend everything, but I know that you're an angel. I know that this is God. I'm just going to submit and say, be it unto me. And the minute she said that, she was impregnated with the baby Jesus. And he grew inside of her. And one of the things that I think is so cool is it says that Mary did not run out and call up her best friend and say, man, you are not going to believe what just happened to me. An angel appeared and the Holy Spirit came, and I have been impregnated with the baby Jesus, who is going to be the Savior of the world. No. And she didn't put it on Instagram. And she didn't put it on Facebook. Now, you know what she did? Take a note of this, women. She pondered this in her heart. What does that mean? She meditated on it. She kept it to herself. You know why? She kept her mouth closed. You know why? So that Satan couldn't steal her faith. He couldn't get to it. He couldn't steal the faith that he had implanted that brought about this immaculate birth. Because it was her faith that said, "Be it unto me." And she kept her mouth shut. And you know how hard that was? Because I'm going to tell you something. Just like today, probably even harder than it ever would be today, for her to be pregnant and to not have been married to Joseph was not a good thing. And here she goes to Joseph, and she said, Joseph, we need to talk. And my husband always goes, "Louise, when you come to me and say we need to talk, it's, oh, no, no, no." Well, I'm pretty sure Joseph was going, "Oh, what have I done now?" And she goes, "Dude, you ain't done nothing." But I'm pregnant. And his first response was, "By who? What Joe have you been meeting with on the side? Who have you been unfaithful with me?" He did. I'm sure he had to deal very seriously with these thoughts. I can imagine my husband would have, any man would have. They would have gone, are we living in the twilight zone here? But you know what? Joseph had a meeting with God, and he got on board. And he said, "Okay, I see what's going on here." And so he told everybody, "She's pregnant. Now I'm going to marry her." Now, I'm going to say something. As far as a lot of people in that little town were concerned, Jesus was an illegitimate child. Oh, Louise, you're kidding. No. They saw him as an illegitimate child because he was conceived before Mary and Joseph, to them, were married. And they didn't have the revelation of him being the Christ child. So you see, they went through a whole lot in order for this baby to come. I mean, we make it out like, wow, isn't that cool? You know, baby Jesus being born in a manger and all the people get... No, they went through a whole lot. And they probably went through a lot of people ostracizing them, whispering behind their backs. And it was a very difficult time for Mary and Joseph. But you know, he stepped up to the plate, and so did she. And when Zachariah was told, and his wife Elizabeth wanted to be pregnant, and the angel told her that she was going to conceive a baby. And what I love about that story is, at the same time, what God did to her husband was, because he was not a believer like Joseph, in the sense of, I don't think he could keep wraps on his mouth. And so God just struck him dumb. For the whole time that Elizabeth was pregnant, he couldn't speak. And I know a lot of people think, well, why did he do that? Because God did not want him to say one word that would have been unbelief to nullify this pregnancy that his wife was going through. Does that tell you a little bit about how much our words affect the outcome of what God is trying to do in our lives? It's so important to understand these little facts. I just love them. And so now we've got Jesus, who is born of God. He's 100%, he has born into this world with no sin nature. And he's a gift, a beautiful, beautiful gift. So let me go off just a second here, because I'm probably going to get some time on my husband. I would try to keep this at a limited span. We're going to continue with this teaching on the miraculous birth of Jesus and what Christmas really means. Satan can't stop us celebrating the birth of Jesus, but he sure can do a number on turning it around, and he has made it so materialistic. So materialistic. when my mother was growing up in a house of 13 children during the before the Depression period, I guess it was around the Depression period, and they were in Alabama on a farm. Mama said, they didn't have a Christmas tree. They didn't have all the lights. They didn't have the blow-ups in front of the house. They didn't have all the skating rinks, and they didn't have the big shopping bonanza. And, they got an orange and an apple in their stocking, and they thought that was a cool thing. The simplicity of that really goes to my heart. Because I think we gripe so much because of inflation and we can't get the gifts that we want. People, stop. Stop. It's not about the gifts or what you want or what you think you deserve. It's about celebrating the birth of our Lord Jesus Christ. And God gave that we could receive, that we can give. Let me turn it around for you a little bit. Instead of being all about what I can get under the tree, think about a little bit about, can I take a little bit of that money, that gifts, all that stuff that I have on that tree that I don't need, half of it we're going to return. Could I not give it to a family that doesn't have any food on their table? Can I give it to a family that they would be grateful if their child just had one gift under the tree? One gift. Could I give it to a family that, let me tell you just a little Christmas story. I may be going over my time here, but bear with me for a second, please. I was driving out, and I don't normally tell about these things, but I was driving out of the neighborhood. And I stopped at our stoplight, and our neighborhood is right next to DCH Hospital. And there was this Afro-American man. He looked like he was in his 80s, but he wasn't. He was a lot younger than that, but he was pretty worn. And he was limping. He was just barely able to walk. And I saw that he had a tag on his arm, so I knew he'd just gotten out of the hospital. And he was headed down toward Alberta. And the Spirit of God stopped me. And I rolled my window down and I said, "Sir, do you need a ride?" And he came over and he could not believe that this woman in this fancy neighborhood would stop long enough to really care that he needed a ride. And he said, "I got hit by a car and I've just gotten out of the hospital, and please, can I have I would love a ride. I live in Alberta." And he lived a good ways away. And I get in the car. And so when he got in the car, I looked at him and I said, "Have you had anything to eat?" He says, "No, I haven't had anything to eat for a couple of days." He says, "We don't have anything in our house." Took him by Chick-fil-A. I think it was not Chick-fil-A, it was Chick or something. I don't know, one of those drive-thrus. And honey, we ordered everything they had on the menu. I'm telling you, I mean, we had the biggest package of chicken and corn on the cob and you name it. And we put it in the car, and he had the biggest smile on his face. And then I was late for an appointment and I was desperate. So I called my husband up and I said, "Come down here, hop in your car, come on down here. Pick this gentleman up and take him to his house," because we had to transfer out. So Larry comes down and he gets him, picks him up, takes the food, gets in the car, and takes him to his house. And he said, "Louise, it was really desperate. It was really desperate." But he was so happy for that food, and he could not believe. And I said, "Let me pray for you." And so I had prayed for him before I transferred him off. And I'm going to tell you something. That's what Christmas is about. People. Let's think about that, okay? So we will pick up in the next couple of days because I'm on a roll here and I love to talk about Christmas. So tune in and we'll check in with Louise's Bible study, and I hope you have a really blessed week. Bye-bye.